Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. We often talk about the power of our thoughts and beliefs. But have you ever really considered that the world around us, the reality we experience, might not be as fixed and solid as we think? Today, we're going to really dive deep into a concept that explores just that. It's called the law of assumption. And get this, it suggests that our inner beliefs actually shape our outer reality in ways we might not even realize.
It's such a fascinating concept. And, at the heart of it, at the heart of the law of assumption, is this really potent principle. What you deeply assume to be true ultimately hardens into fact in your reality. So in other words, your beliefs don't just stay as thoughts in your head, they become the blueprint of your life. It's like this invisible force shaping your experiences.
Yeah, and this idea was really championed by Neville Goddard. He was a mystic and author who emphasized this idea that nothing exists independently of our consciousness. And when you really start to unpack that, it's kind of mind-blowing.
Absolutely. And it's so relevant today, right? We're bombarded with all this information about manifesting and personal development. And, a lot of that focuses on like attracting what you want. But the law of assumption, I think, offers a more direct approach.
It's not so much about trying to pull something towards you, but about stepping into the knowingness that it's already yours. It's like a subtle but profound shift in perspective.
Exactly. You're not striving for a future outcome. You're aligning yourself with a present reality where it's already a fact.
Right.
And that's a powerful distinction.
So, to understand how all this works, how to actually apply the law of assumption effectively, we've been diving deep into some really compelling material.
Yes. And we're excited to distill the essence of it, of this law, into something really clear and actionable for you guys. Because, there's a lot of information out there and it can get pretty overwhelming.
Right. So, let's bring it down and really explore the core of this. Let's start with the foundations. What are the fundamental concepts that we need to grasp about the law of assumption?
Okay, so it really boils down to this. Your subconscious beliefs are the bedrock of your reality. What you're convinced is true on a deep level, you will ultimately experience. If you're convinced you're unlucky in love, you'll probably find evidence for that everywhere. And conversely, if you deeply believe you're destined for abundance, opportunities will seem to magically appear.
So, it's like our subconscious is calling the shots, even if we're not fully aware of it.
Exactly. So if you desire a different reality, a happier, more fulfilling life, the key lies in reprogramming those subconscious beliefs, in imprinting new assumptions onto your subconscious mind.
So, how do we do that? Like, what's the process?
It's about changing those deep-seated convictions. And as those assumptions begin to take root, our beliefs naturally shift, and our outer world starts to mirror those inner changes. Our experiences start aligning with our new assumptions.
Now, you mentioned the law of attraction earlier. It's a concept that's pretty popular. A lot of people have heard of it. What's the crucial difference between that and the law of assumption?
Oh, that's a really important point. While both of them, the law of attraction and the law of assumption, acknowledge that our thoughts and beliefs are incredibly powerful and shape our reality, there's this fundamental difference in, I guess, the way we perceive our relationship with the desired outcome.
Okay, so how is it different?
You see, the law of attraction often focuses on this idea that attracts like. You attract what you focus on, what you put your energy and attention towards. It's about aligning your vibration with what you want.
Okay, yeah, I've heard that before.
But the law of assumption kind of flips that on its head a little bit. It says that your desired reality, whatever you want, it already exists. The work is not about attracting it from somewhere outside of yourself, but about assuming you're already living in that reality. It's an internal shift.
It's about embodying that reality, even if it doesn't seem to be reflected in your outer circumstances just yet.
Exactly. You're shifting your inner state to match the reality where your desire is already fulfilled.
And this actually ties into one of the really powerful takeaways from the sources we've been exploring for this deep dive, this idea that we've had this power all along, often without even realizing it.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. You've been manifesting your entire life
Mm.
through your assumptions, whether you've been conscious of it or not. Every belief you've held, every assumption you've made, it's all contributed to shaping your reality.
Wow.
The really empowering aspect of the law of assumption is realizing that you can consciously take charge of this process. You can intentionally cultivate new assumptions that lead to the life you truly desire.
So we can choose what we want to experience and then create it through our assumptions.
Precisely. And another really key concept that came up a lot in our research is the idea of infinite realities.
Yeah, this is where it starts to get really mind-bending.
Right. So the idea is there's not just one fixed reality, but an infinite number of realities existing simultaneously. And each of these realities contains a different version of you and your life playing out different scenarios. So when you assume your wish is fulfilled, you're essentially aligning your consciousness with the specific reality where that is already true. It's about consciously shifting your awareness, your focus, to inhabit that reality as if it were your current one.
So it's not about creating something new, but more like tuning into the frequency of the reality where it already exists?
Exactly.
Okay, this is all starting to make sense. But let's talk about the practical side of things. How do we actually start applying the law of assumption in our daily lives? What are some of the techniques we can use?
Sure. So the first step, and this is really crucial, is to identify and define your desires clearly.
This sounds kind of obvious, but when you think about it, a lot of times our desires are kind of vague, right? Like, I want to be happy or I want more money.
Absolutely. And the thing is, the more specific you are about what you want, the more effectively you can direct your assumptions, your energy towards it. It's like having a clear destination on a map. It makes it a lot easier to get there.
And our sources really stress this point, that it's not enough to just have these general desires. We need to really dig deep and get specific. It's almost like having, an unlimited number of wishes and then really taking the time to figure out what would truly make you happy and fulfilled.
Right. And it's not just about listing those desires, but really understanding the why behind them. What's the core feeling, the state of being that you're truly seeking?
Yeah, what's driving you? What do you want to feel? Because that's what's going to fuel your visualizations, your affirmations, and ultimately your manifestation.
And, our sources really emphasize that it's not just about the tangible aspects of your desires, but about immersing yourself in the feeling of already having it. It's about engaging all your senses, your emotions, your imagination.
So, like, if you desire financial abundance, it's not just about visualizing a big pile of money. It's about feeling the relief of being financially secure, the freedom to do the things you love, the generosity you can express towards others.
Yeah, it's about embodying that state of abundance in your mind and your heart. And this brings us to one of the most powerful techniques in the law of assumption: visualization.
This is where it starts to get really fun and creative, right?
Absolutely. Visualization is all about creating short, vivid mental scenes that represent your wish fulfilled. The idea is to experience those scenes from a first-person perspective, as if you're already living in that reality.
Okay, so let's say you're visualizing your dream home. It's not just about seeing the house, it's about feeling the warmth of the sun streaming through the windows, smelling the fresh-baked bread in the kitchen, hearing the laughter of your loved ones filling the rooms.
Exactly. It's about making it real in your mind, using all your senses. And, our sources recommend keeping these scenes relatively short, maybe 30 seconds to a minute long, and looping them repeatedly throughout the day. And, there's a particular time that's especially potent for visualization.
Oh yeah, this came up a lot in our research, the state akin to sleep, or SATs. Can you explain what that is and why it's so powerful?
Yeah, SATs is that drowsy, relaxed state you enter just before falling asleep or as you're waking up. It's that kind of twilight zone between wakefulness and sleep. And what makes it so powerful is that your conscious mind, the part of you that analyzes and doubts and overthinks, is much less active during this time.
So it's like our subconscious mind is more accessible, more open to suggestion.
Exactly. And that makes it a really fertile ground for imprinting new assumptions, for really planting those seeds of your desires.
So how do we actually use SATs for manifestation?
Well, as you're drifting off to sleep, or maybe just as you're waking up, you gently bring your chosen visualization to mind, or you start repeating your affirmations. You're still conscious enough to direct your focus, but you're also allowing yourself to relax deeper and deeper into that drowsy state.
And the repetition here is key, right? The more we can loop those visualizations or affirmations during this relaxed state, the more deeply they'll be impressed upon our subconscious. And, our sources also highlighted a couple of other really interesting techniques related to visualization that kind of go beyond just looping a scene. The I remember when technique and the eavesdropping technique. Can you explain those a little bit?
Sure. So the I remember when technique is all about reframing your perception of your current reality, which our sources often refer to as the 3D reality.
That's just a fancy way of saying the physical sensory world we experience, right?
Exactly. So when you encounter something in the 3D that seems to contradict your desired manifestation, like let's say you're assuming abundance, but you get an unexpected bill, Instead of reacting to it or letting it get you down, you mentally declare, I remember when my reality was like that. You're essentially creating the assumption that that unwanted circumstance is in the past. It's no longer part of your present assumed reality.
That's such a clever way to shift your perspective.
It is, right. And then the eavesdropping technique, this one's really fun. It involves using your imagination to hear other people talking about your manifested desire as if it's already happened. So if you're assuming a promotion at work, you might imagine overhearing your colleagues congratulating you on your new role, talking about how much you deserve it and how well you're going to do.
Oh, I like that one. It's like creating this sense of external validation, even if it's just in your imagination.
Exactly. And that really helps to solidify your assumption.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about visualization, but what about affirmations? How do they fit into the law of assumption?
Well, affirmations are positive statements that you declare to be true, essentially reinforcing your desired assumptions. And the key here is to choose affirmations that feel natural and authentic to you. They should resonate with you. They should feel good when you say them.
It's not about just mindlessly repeating words, but about feeling the truth of them, believing them on a deep level.
Absolutely. So instead of saying something weak, like, I hope to be wealthy, you might say, I am abundantly wealthy. Opportunities for financial increase flow to me effortlessly.
Yeah, that's much more powerful.
It is. And the way you use affirmations is by consciously looping them throughout your day, especially during those moments when your mind might otherwise wander to negative or unproductive thoughts.
So it's like replacing those negative thoughts with positive, empowering statements that align with our desires.
Precisely. And the consistent repetition of these affirmations gradually imprints them onto your subconscious mind.
Okay, so visualization and affirmations are key techniques. But there's another really important aspect that our sources emphasized, and that's the importance of our self-concept.
Oh yeah, this is crucial. Self-concept is basically the collection of beliefs we hold about ourselves. It's our internal image of who we are. And this has a huge impact on our ability to manifest our desires.
So if we subconsciously believe we're unworthy or undeserving, we're going to sabotage our own efforts no matter how much we visualize or affirm.
That's exactly right. And that's why working on our self-concept is so important. We need to cultivate beliefs about ourselves that are in alignment with our desires.
So instead of saying things like, I'm not good enough, or I always mess things up, we need to start affirming things like, I am worthy of love and happiness, or I am capable of achieving anything I set my mind to.
Yes, those are great examples. And the more you repeat these affirmations, the more you start to believe them, and the more your reality will reflect that belief.
And there was one technique in particular that I found really fascinating, and that's the use of placebos. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so placebos are a great example of the power of belief, right? Basically this idea that if you believe something will have a certain effect, it often does, even if it has no inherent power itself.
So, like, if you take a sugar pill believing it's a powerful painkiller, you might actually experience pain relief, even though there's no actual medicine in the pill.
That's exactly right. And you can intentionally use this principle to strengthen your belief in the law of assumption.
How so?
Well, you can choose a neutral object, like a glass of water, for example, and consciously imbue it with a specific intention. You can say, this glass of water is going to give me incredible energy and focus. And then as you drink it, you really focus on that belief, on that feeling of energy and focus. And you might be surprised by the results.
So it's like a little experiment you can do to prove to yourself the power of your own mind.
Exactly. And the more you experience these kinds of results, the stronger your faith in the law of assumption will become.
And then finally, our sources also talked about the practice of scripting. What is that exactly?
Scripting is basically a form of journaling where you write about your desires as if they've already manifested. So you might write a detailed description of your dream day, or you might write a letter to a friend, sharing the exciting news about your recent success.
It's like creating your own reality on paper.
Yeah, and the act of writing it down, of putting it into words, really helps to solidify your assumption and make it feel more real.
Okay, so we've explored a whole range of techniques: visualization, essay tests, affirmations, using placebos, and scripting. But now, let's talk about a really crucial aspect that often causes people to stumble when they're trying to apply the law of assumption. How to deal with the 3D reality, the current circumstances in our lives that might seem to contradict our desired reality.
Yes, this is such an important point because it can be really discouraging, right? You're working on embodying your new assumptions, but then you look around and you see all these things in your external world that seem to be saying, no, you're not there yet.
Like you're assuming abundance, but you're still struggling to pay the bills.
Ugh.
Or you're assuming a loving relationship, but you're still single.
Exactly. And it's so easy to get caught up in those external circumstances and start doubting the whole process.
Mhm.
But what's important to remember is that the 3D reality, the world we see around us, is just a reflection of our past assumptions. It's not a fixed, unchanging thing. It's constantly responding to our beliefs.
So it's like a mirror reflecting back to us what we've been holding in our minds.
Yes. And if we want to change the reflection, we need to change what we're holding in our minds.
And that requires a conscious effort to shift our focus away from those external circumstances and onto our desired reality.
Exactly. And one of the biggest mistakes people make is constantly checking the 3D for validation.
Like constantly looking for signs that their manifestation is coming and getting discouraged when they don't see them.
Right. And the thing is, that kind of behavior actually reinforces the lack, the absence of what we want. It keeps our attention on what we don't have instead of what we do want to create.
So instead of obsessing over what's not there, we need to cultivate a deep inner knowing, a sense of certainty that our desire is already a fact in another reality and that it will inevitably manifest in our current experience as well.
Yes. And when we encounter something in the 3D that seems to contradict our desired reality, instead of reacting with fear or doubt, we need to simply acknowledge it and then redirect our focus back to our assumptions.
So instead of getting caught up in the drama of the 3D, we need to remember that we're the ones creating the reality we experience, and we have the power to change it.
Exactly. We can choose to give our power to those external circumstances, or we can choose to reclaim our power and focus on creating the reality we desire.
Now, our sources also highlighted some common mistakes that people often make when they're trying to apply the law of assumption. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, so one of the most common mistakes is getting too caught up in finding the perfect technique.
Like thinking there's one right way to do it.
Exactly. And the thing is, there isn't. The law of assumption is not about rigid methodology. It's about the consistency and conviction with which you embody your desired assumptions.
It's about the feeling, the knowingness that what you desire is already yours.
Yes. And whether you find visualization, affirmations, essays, or scripting to be the most effective tool for you is less important than the consistency and the belief you bring to the process.
Another mistake is that constant checking of the 3D reality that we talked about earlier, looking for validation instead
Yeah.
of trusting the process.
Right. And another common pitfall is getting stuck in the learning phase, consuming tons of information about the law of assumption without actually applying it.
Like becoming a master of the theory without ever putting it into practice.
Exactly. It's one thing to understand the concepts, but it's another thing entirely to actually embody them and live them out in your life.
And then finally, our sources really emphasized the importance of using affirmations that feel authentic to you.
Right, because if your affirmations don't resonate with you, if they feel forced or unnatural, they're not going to be very effective.
So it's important to personalize them, to use language that feels good to you and that evokes a genuine feeling of the wish fulfilled.
Absolutely. And perhaps the biggest mistake of all is doubting the law of assumption itself. If you don't truly believe that your assumptions have the power to shape your reality, then you're not going to see the results you desire.
So belief is key.
It really is.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what would you say is the single most important takeaway for our listeners regarding the law of assumption?
The core principle, the heart of it all, is this. Assume your wish is fulfilled. Believe. Feel that it's already done. Your assumptions, when held consistently and with feeling, will ultimately harden into your reality.
It's not about figuring out the how or the when. It's about embodying the feeling of the is.
Exactly.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this episode. We've explored the power of assumption, the role of the subconscious mind, and a range of practical techniques we can use to intentionally shape